If you think footballers are getting younger, not only are you correct, but you are actually onto something that is quietly reshaping the entire sport. Just take a look at this Chelsea team. Of these 11 players, every single one of them is under 27 years old. Now think about the most famous players in the world. Maybe a Lamine Yamal or a Jude Bellingham? Well, they're both 18 and 22 respectively. And recently, Arsenal just had a 15-year-old Max Dowman playing for them in the Champions League. But you might be thinking that football has always produced teenage sensations. Pelé won the World Cup at 17. Messi was starting for Barcelona at 17. And Cristiano Ronaldo was starting for Manchester United at 18 years old. However, these guys were the exception. You see, Messi was breaking into a Barcelona team surrounded by seasoned veterans. People like Puyol, Xavi, and Ronaldinho. Players who were all more than 7 years older than Messi. He also only played 70 minutes for Barca that season. You see, he wasn't a leader like Lamine Yamal is at such a young age. He was just developing. And the same thing can be said about Cristiano Ronaldo. He was also surrounded by footballers like Gary Neville, who was 28, Roy Keane, who was 31, and Paul Scholes, who was also 28. In fact, he was one of 2 teenagers in that United team that season. But football is so different today. There are over 100 teenagers playing in Europe's top 5 leagues, and that number is only going up. So why on earth is this happening? Well, a lot of it has to do with stricter financial regulations in football. For example, in the Premier League, there is something called profit and sustainability rules, which essentially means a club is only allowed to lose £105 million in a 3-year period. So things like big transfers and high wages really affect an English club. But crucially, investments into academies and youth development don't actually count towards these regulations at all. So in a way, clubs are being financially encouraged to spend more on developing young talents in their own backyard rather than looking to sign big talents from elsewhere. And this is a huge reason why academies are getting so much better. I mean, you might think a football academy includes a couple of pitches and maybe a small gym, but today it is so much more than that. Take Manchester City's academy. You have players who are still in school that get to start their day off with basically a buffet of nutritional foods, and then that's followed by an analysis of their matches to help them get better at their game. And afterwards, these young players get access to a state-of-the-art gym where they can focus on building their body and being physically fit and injury-free. And then there's the fun part where they can train on the field and really hone their skills. I mean, there's even times where these academy players, like Caden Braithwaite, who is 17, who was given the opportunity to train with the first team, which honestly just shows you how close the Manchester City academy is with Pep Guardiola's first team. I mean, with top facilities, expert coaching, early first team exposure, players are ready sooner than ever. And that's why Man City has seen the likes of Phil Foden, Rico Lewis, and Brahim Diaz graduate from their academy, and why footballers are getting younger. But there's more. These younger footballers are also becoming more preferable to older ones because they're a good financial investment. Think about it. You could have a promising kid from your own academy without having to pay an insane transfer fee. Like Lamine Yamal, who joined FC Barcelona's academy when he was just 7 years old. And since then has been rising through the ranks, winning a Euros for Spain and also 2 league titles for Barca. So now Barcelona has a wonder kid worth £200 million. And they didn't have to pay any transfer fees to get him because he's homegrown. And Barca aren't the only team. Man United sold Alejandro Garnacho to Chelsea for £40 million. And Man City has sold players like Cole Palmer, Liam Delap, and others for an excess of £120 million in just the last few seasons. And because these guys are academy grown, these amounts are pure profit. There are no fees or financial risks attached. But in comparison, older footballers are a huge financial risk. Take PSG. They spent £200 million on Neymar and later signed Lionel Messi on a short 2-year deal. When they played together in 2021, Neymar was 29 and Messi was 34, while the rest of the team included some big names like Mbappe and Sergio Ramos. The average age of that starting 11 was nearly 28 years old, and that's part of the reason why the team underperformed. Many players were past their prime, and Paris, well, they suffered emotionally and financially. So then PSG did something different. Neymar left, Messi left, and Mbappe left. They started with a clean slate, making smaller, younger signings like Ousmane Dembele, Desiré Doué, João Neves, and Kvaratskhelia. The average age of the squad now was just 25, and their team wasn't full of big names who had egos. Instead, it was filled with players who were young, hungry, and had something to prove. And they definitely proved something because they won almost every single trophy in their way, including their first Champions League trophy ever. And honestly, I think Luis Enrique, who was the manager of PSG, did something remarkable with his team, and that was that he allowed these youngsters to play with creative freedom. I mean, the way Desiré Doué, who was 19 at the time, was moving the ball reminded me a lot of Neymar. It seriously looked like he was just gliding gliding across the pitch. And that brings me to my next point, which is that managers are finally giving youngsters a proper chance. Like, could you imagine 10 years ago a 15-year-old playing in the Premier League? Probably not. But Mikel Arteta decided to give Max Staumann a chance earlier this season in the Prem. And he has played pretty well for them so far, most notably winning a penalty against Leeds. But there is something interesting about how Arteta described Daumann when asked about him. He said, "You have it or you don't, and it doesn't matter what his passport says." And for me, this shows how managers aren't really discriminating anymore when it comes to a footballer's age. It's basically a situation now where if you're good enough, you get to play. And honestly, some of these young players are becoming leaders, which is a bit of a new concept. Because when you think of a leader, you probably think of a Sergio Ramos in his early 30s leading Real Madrid to endless titles, or even a Paolo Maldini in his early 30s, who steered AC Milan to Champions League trophies. But in the state of how young football is today, I now think of moments like the Euros in 2024, when a 21-year-old Jude Bellingham led England to a Euros final where they unfortunately lost. But it just felt like he was still such a central leader in that English squad. And even at FC Barcelona today, an 18-year-old Lamine Yamal is growing out of just being a teenage sensation, but now actually becoming a genuine role model at the club. You know, leadership in football used to come with age, but now it just comes with responsibility. So perhaps we're seeing the beginning of young footballers dominating football as we know it.